Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. I'm Trent Christensen, and this is KMMU. KMMU and Main Street Media stream live wherever you enjoy your streaming. We broadcast live on YouTube, Rumble, X, and on our website, kmmu.org. Now, please join our host, Dan Fillmore. This is Let's Talk Utah's Dan the Eagle.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Dan the Eagle. I'm really excited for today's guest. It's going to be an amazing show. Before I jump into all that, I just want to thank you guys for watching, and I want you to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to my personal one that it's on YouTube called Dan the Eagle 76, or you can subscribe to Main Street Media, which is, not Main Street Media, Main Street Media Utah on their YouTube, on their X, or on their Rumble. We stream here live every weekday. My show is Wednesdays at 4:30. So if you haven't liked, if you haven't subscribed, please do so now. So today our guest is a very, very interesting person, probably the most high-profile person that I've had on my show so far. So I'm really excited to talk with him, get to know him better. His name is Trent Christensen. You might recognize that name because he actually ran for the Attorney General position in the state of Utah. He's also run for Congress in the past. Right now, he is the executive director of Focus, which is an educational nonprofit that gives scholarships and helps Utah families with children who have behavior and social skills issues, so like neurodivergence and stuff like that. So that's his main focus right now. But in the past, like I mentioned, he has gone into politics. He has a long life of experience in multiple different careers, including law, entrepreneurship, and politics. He was the general counsel for Omnitech, which is a large tech corporation. He spent 3 years as the CEO of a venture accelerator based in Salt Lake and helped first-time entrepreneurs raise investment capital for their startups. He also served as vice president for community development at Zions Bank, and he was also the executive director for Senator Orrin G. Hatch's Center for Civility and Solutions. So, without further ado, we are going to bring my man Trent Christensen into the show. Trent, thanks for having me. Have you?
Thank you. I'm so happy to be on this show. Happy to be a part of KMMU. I've heard so much about it for so long, and grateful that I get to kick it off with you, Dan the Eagle, on your show. So it's an honor. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we're just getting started. We're still pretty small. We don't have a ton of listeners yet, but we will one day, and that's what we're really excited for.
The revolution started off small too, and that worked out. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, Trent, you have a very large history in Utah politics and Utah business and in all of these things, and so I want to really get into the details with you on this kind of stuff. So, first of all, I looked on your website because it's still up from your 2024 run. What were some issues that you felt like propelled you into running for Attorney General for the state of Utah?
Election integrity, period. End of story. And I told this story a number of times on the campaign trail, but I think it's still timely. There was an article that had come out in October of 2023, if I recall, and it was that there was a legislator who happened to be the brother-in-law to the governor that had proposed making the Attorney General position an appointed position under the governor. And to me, all that said was the governor's trying to take away the people's voice. And the governor said that, he hadn't really seen the bill and whatnot, but you see all of those kind of maneuvers politically happening. I mean, there's SB 54, which is still being fought, right? That legislator, to my knowledge, has backed off that plan. But what it told me is that there was a power grab in the state. And you look at everything else that was happening in the state. And I congratulate the legislature on some of the steps that they took in this last session. For example, making mail-in ballots so that you have to request them, making it so you have to put a voter ID on the mail-in ballots. Great steps. But in my opinion, election integrity means one person, one vote, paper, in person, period. And there was a lot to be done there. And the funny thing is I got a lot of pushback actually from other candidates as well, saying, well, that's not the Attorney General's job. And my response is, yes, it is. Everything is the Attorney General's job. The Attorney General in this state is a co-equal with the governor. right? He's actually higher than the lieutenant governor. He's a co-equal. He or she does not answer to the governor, doesn't take directions from the governor. He gets his budget from the legislature, but he doesn't take directions from the legislature. And so my thing was, look, there's so much that the attorney general could do to further election integrity in this state. And I'll give you an example right now. I don't know if you know Michael Clara, Clara. If your listeners haven't heard of him, then go check out. He's done about 13 episodes on Spencer Cox and the signature gathering process, the snafu that happened there. That's a nice word for it. And how, frankly, statistically speaking, there is absolutely no way Spencer Cox could have qualified to be on the ballot. He did not get the necessary threshold at convention. He did not get the signatures. In fact, his statistical analysis shows that it is more likely that Joe Biden won the 2020 election, which he did not, than it is that Spencer Cox qualified to be on the ballot. So Michael's doing fantastic work about this, but where's the attorney general? The attorney general just filed a motion to vacate a grandma request that Michael Clara made of lieutenant governor to get those signature packets. And the reason the lieutenant governor isn't giving him those packets is she's saying, well, the attorney general has to sign off on it. Meanwhile, the attorney general is the one trying to vacate the order, right? It's a protection racket. And nobody's doing the hard work of nobody in the government, let me say. Michael's doing a great job. Phil Lyman's doing a great job. But the attorney general has vast power that he could make a difference there, but he's chosen not to. And so,
what do you think? Sorry, what do you think? Because I'm sure that like on the trail, if you tried to explain this to somebody who doesn't pay attention to politics and isn't into the nitty gritty, they're going to kind of hear you as someone with a tinfoil hat. So what do you say? What do you say to somebody who says, well, that all sounds like a little bit conspiratorial. I don't really feel like that's how it works. What would you say back to that?
And it's funny. I ran into people like that all the time.
I'm sure you did.
And what I would say is, look, one of the founding principles of this country is one person, one vote. We're a constitutional republic that has aspects of a democracy, right? We're not a democracy, but one of those aspects of democracy is one person, one vote, meaning you get a vote, I get a vote. And I said, but what if your vote doesn't count, right? And some people say, well, I don't vote because I live in Utah, it's a red state, or I don't vote because I live in New York, it's a blue state. Well, that's discounting your vote. And if you're okay with your voice being discounted, then there's nothing I can do to help you. But if you actually care about your vote, you should care about whether or not people followed the rules to get on the ballot to serve as your governor.
So explain a little bit then. I don't know if this has to do with SB 54.
It does, yeah.
Explain a little bit more about like the signature verification. Like what was the problem with that?
Yeah. Well, and let me, if I could back up just a quick step and give a little bit of background for your listeners on SB 54.
Please do.
It used to be in this state that in order to get into public office, federal or state, you had to go through convention, meaning all these delegates, roughly 4,000 delegates, go to their precinct caucuses. Their neighbors elect them to be delegates and to represent them. Then they go and vet the candidates. They do their homework. I've never seen a harder working group of people. And they say, okay, these are the ones that I think my neighbors want in office. Okay. Now, if you got 60% of the vote at convention, you automatically won. If two people got somewhere between, 50, whatever, 55, 45, they both went on. But when Mike Lee beat Senator Bennett at convention and knocked him out, and nobody saw that coming, and Mike Lee, that's how he became a senator. Well, the establishment wasn't happy with that. They weren't going to have that again. Some nobody coming out of nowhere and knocking off one of their people. So they developed SB 54. Took them a couple of years to put it in the works and get it all passed, but it created a dual path to get on the ballot, meaning you could go and gather signatures. You had to get a certain number of signatures from every county in the state. Right now, that total for a statewide office is 28,000. So for attorney general, for governor, 28,000 signatures.
That's not very many.
Well, it isn't until you factor in a lot of these candidates. No, let me take that back. Not a lot. Some of these candidates are very well funded, okay? Or they're celebrities. They can come in and pay companies to go out and get those signatures for them, okay?
Right.
And that was the big knock on SB 54 is you're bypassing the delegates. The delegates are doing the vetting, but now you're just going to go out and pay to get signatures. And Dan, I'm telling you, that could be upwards of $250,000 to get the required signatures, okay? Right. So talk about money in politics, right? Well, so here's where we get to Spencer Cox. Spencer Cox used a company called Gather. John Curtis used them. Derek Brown used them, the current attorney general. Other people used them. That company hired think of like the pest control bros, right? Just an army of guys that go out, knock on doors and women and get signatures, right? Well, you have to get a certain number of signatures from every county. They have to be verified. They have to be Republican voters. right? So there's a lot that goes into that. And so when you turn in your signatures, county clerks and the lieutenant governor, they go through and they verify those signatures. Well, when it came time for the deadline, they found out, oh, the governor doesn't have the required number of signatures. And their excuse to let him through was, well, you know, we've got 5 more days. I'm sure if we gave him the time, he would get it done, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, magically, they just pushed it through, okay? Those are the packets. That's the information that people like Michael Clara are trying to get. They're trying to say, look, Lieutenant Governor, it's a public record. We have a right to it. We want to see it. We want to see that he officially hit the signature total. Because the signatures, you can think of it as one person, one vote, right? Somebody comes to your door and says, Dan, will you sign this so the governor can get on the ballot? You can say yes or no, right? So the argument was he didn't get the signatures. He didn't qualify to be on the ballot. Then when he went to convention, the speech that he gave upset so many people that he didn't even get 40% of the vote at convention. Right. So Phil Lyman's the only one on the ballot so far. If he doesn't get those signatures, he's out. That's it. End of story, right? But somehow, some way, they say, no, he got it. He passed the threshold. Trust us.
I see. So the whole idea, first of all, I guess SB 54 is an issue in and of itself because it subverts, I guess, the people's will. But I mean, it passed a legislature, so it is law. But then the main issue is that we don't actually know that the governor got that many signatures because they weren't verified in time. Is that what you're saying? Well,
and yeah, there's 2 issues there. People are just, upset generally that SB 54 is even allowed, that people can get on the ballot just by paying, because that's the argument.
Yeah, I hear it, and I don't like the idea of that.
Right, you bought your way on the ballot is the argument, right? And it holds water. But then there's the separate issue, like, okay, if you have to get the signatures, prove that you got the signatures.
Right.
And at the time of the election, at the time of the verification, at the time of the primary election, at the time of the general election, Phil Lyman, Natalie Clausen, they're out there banging the drum. He didn't get the signatures. And every grammar request, public records request they sent out was just stonewalled, denied, gone, right? So back to your original question, where's the Attorney General, right? The Attorney General stands alone at the top as the state's top legal officer. It doesn't make him the government's lawyer. It makes him your lawyer, okay? And if something's happening that's against the will of the people, the Attorney General has, if nothing else, the power to investigate it, to subpoena it, to say, no, I want to see this. You're going to show it to me. And if the only attorneys that the Lieutenant Governor has are assistant attorney generals, right? Yeah. It's all through the Attorney General's office. That's someone who could make a change.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a compelling message to me. Obviously you didn't win. So tell me, what were some things that I guess that they were throwing back to kind of counter this argument?
Well, there wasn't a lot. That's an interesting question. Nobody was trying to counter this argument per se. People were saying, other candidates were saying, well, the Attorney General doesn't really have the power that Trent says that person does. And my response was, the Attorney General has never used those powers. It doesn't mean the Attorney General doesn't have those powers. There's just never been anybody in that office that was willing to stand up to the governor, willing to stand up to the legislature and use those powers. That's very different. Right. And then, interestingly, Dan, by the end of the primary, you saw flyers, mailers, other candidates all saying, yeah, election integrity, that is my issue. Because we would go to Wasatch County and Summit County and Washington County and Box Elder County, and everybody, people would just like, yes, thank you, Attorney General, woo. And you start talking about election integrity, and that hits home because people understand, if we don't have election integrity, we got nothing.
Right.
If you're not picking your elected representatives, like, it's over, right?
Yeah. It's not a republic at that point.
And it's the whole argument behind deportation of illegal immigrants, right? Why the Biden administration was allowing them in floods, allowing an invasion to happen, and why Trump's trying to push them back out. It's the same principle. You're just trying to flood the country with other voters, right? You're just election integrity or election disintegrity by different means.
Yeah, right. Well, that is interesting. I don't know Derek Brown super well. I wasn't unhappy, I guess, when he won. What do you think about how he's doing since he's been elected? Do you like what he's doing? You think he should do more?
There's a standard that I use, and I'm not going to judge Derek by the standard yet. He's been in for a couple of months, and there's some great things they've been doing. Like, they went and argued, his Solicitor General went and argued a case at the Supreme Court dealing with federal lands, administrative rights. He's been doing things with education. Great. But here's one of the bars, and it's interesting because it involves a Democrat AG. I would go and I would talk to every single one of the county sheriffs, right? I talked to the Fraternal Order of the Police. And almost all of them would say, you know who was the best attorney general we had in recent history? Jan Graham. I'm like, what? Jan Graham. I mean, that's really reaching back there.
Is that, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, she was right before Shurtleff. Okay. So she was, think like all the way back to Mike Levitt and Norm Bangerter. Okay. All the way back there.
So like in the 80s or 90s?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I said, okay, tell me, there's got to be a reason. And they said, she backed us up. Law enforcement knew that if they went and arrested somebody, the attorney general's got their back.
Yeah.
And I used to say on the campaign trail all the time, like, look, the police, the sheriffs, those guys are the tip of the spear, right? But the attorney general is the spear. And you go and arrest somebody and you don't know the attorney general has your back, well, then what are you doing? I'll give you a story. It breaks my heart. They were telling me, one particular sheriff, I won't give you his name, but he was telling me my guys, meaning my deputies, they will encounter someone with fentanyl in their car. Just boom, right there, plain view, okay? And they don't arrest them. And I said, okay, well, that's fentanyl, right? That's illegal. Why don't they arrest them? And they say, look, if we arrest them for that fentanyl, it won't get prosecuted. It won't. It's not a big enough deal to the current attorney general, to the powers that be, to arrest that guy. So my deputies are supposed to put their life on the line, get this guy out of the car, arrest him, book him, do all the paperwork, hold him, draw up a case, and then the attorney general lets it go. Like, why would my deputies do that? So they don't arrest them. They see it and let it go. But under Jan Graham, it was like, she's got our back. We arrest this guy, they're going to take him down. Okay. I don't
understand why wouldn't the attorney general be supportive of something like that?
So we've had attorney generals, two in recent memory, that were much more interested in enriching themselves and using the office for political gain than they were for doing the job. I think Sean Reyes, aside from those two, I think Sean Reyes did a really good job in a lot of different ways. But law enforcement didn't always feel like he had their back. The sheriffs meet once a month, every month in a different place. They'll go to whatever, Tremont or, wherever, Springville, and attorney general doesn't show up. Nobody from his office shows up. Like, that's an important, important symbiotic relationship, right?
Showing up, yeah.
We need to show up if nothing else for each other, right? And so there wasn't the emphasis on, look, the attorney general's number one job is the top cop, right? The top cop, not the top lawyer. You're, representing the people, and the police are protecting the people. Sheriffs are protecting the people. But if those bad guys don't get prosecuted, like, what are we doing? My guy, that's what the sheriff told me. I'll never forget this. My guys are supposed to put their life on the line. And then this guy that they arrested, they know he's not going to get prosecuted. Why would they do that? Right.
I heard a story just recently from, I want to say it was in Minnesota, where there was someone who firebombed like 6 Teslas, and they take him in, and then they let him off the hook, and they just said, basically, we're just going to give you a slap on the wrist. Go about your business.
Do you know why? Do you know what his job was? That guy,
the government employee that they grabbed.
Do you know who he worked for previously? Mike Waltz. You recognize that name?
Sure do.
Tim Waltz. Sorry, Tim Waltz. Tim Waltz.
I was going to say Mike Waltz. We like that guy.
I was going to say, wait a second. That doesn't sound
Tim Waltz. Different Waltz.
Governor of Minnesota, former vice presidential candidate, right? And when you run a state and it's corrupt, then the corrupt people go free, right?
Because here's, like, we hear those stories and we think, oh, thank God I don't live in Minnesota. But you're saying that we can't say that because we live in Utah soda.
If you take a map of the United States, Utah soda, I like that. There's plenty of soda here. And you looked at every single state and their trend over the 2024 election, every single state trended red. Not that they are red, like California is still very blue, but they trended red except Utah. Utah is the only state out of all 50 that trended blue, right? And why is that? Well, there's probably a lot of reasons for that, but I think a lot of people can point to election integrity, right? Like, we're getting a lot of refugees out of California and stuff like that, demographic shifts, that's going to be part of it, but our politics are changing. I just had a conversation with a good friend yesterday where I just about lost my mind at this argument of like, my vote doesn't count in Utah because it's so red. And it's like, that's the argument that they want you to believe. That's the psyop, right? That's the Kool-Aid they want you drinking so that just in the dark of the night, Utah turns blue.
Sure.
There's a famous political commentator, James Lindsay. He presented a couple years ago at the Eagle Forum event. Gail Rosica does, awesome event. And he had this theory. He said, look, there's 3 kinds of states. There's red states, and there's blue states, and then there's fake red states. There's no such thing as a fake blue state, right? Like if it's blue, it's blue. You don't have to worry about it. But there are a lot of fake blue states. And he said, frankly, he just said to the audience, no offense, Utah is the fakest of the fake red states. And so, that's what we're living with right now. Like, can we trust that the police are able to do their job? They want to do their job. I know they do. But can they, right? Do they have somebody backing them up to do their job? And that was always number 2. You'd asked me earlier, my biggest issue, election integrity and backing up the cops. Top cop, giving them the assurance that they do their job. I've got their back. And so I think Derek's doing, to answer your question, I think Derek's doing some good things. I'm going to withhold judgment right now. I want to see, are we going to stop being a sanctuary state? Are we going to start going after the fentanyl, right? Yeah. Are we going to stop what's happening? I mean, we're seeing articles about it. They're suppressing some of it, but illegal immigrant rapes a girl in Harriman, there was somebody in American Fork who was pulled over, this was last year, with 30 pounds of fentanyl in his car. Yeah. That could kill like half the state, right? Like, is that what we're going to stop? Because that's going to require an attorney general that rolls up his sleeves and says, we're going to war.
I remember, I guess one of the things that I think that drives me crazy about Utah is that we are very quote unquote conservative, I guess, because you could say like we are very religious. We don't even drink coffee. I mean, that's how conservative the state is. But on things like enforcing the law, especially when it comes to like illegal immigration, I see a lot of squishiness. Yeah. And I see a lot of hesitation to enforce any rules because you don't want to be mean. And that's like, to me, being nice is not like actually a value. Being charitable is. Right. And enforcing the law is charitable to those who actually are protected by it. So what do you think about people when they would just say, well, like we just need to be nice and enforcing the law is kind of mean? Because I hear that not directly, but indirectly. You know what I'm talking about? Like an indirect kind of like, well, let's just be a little nice. Like, what do you make of that argument?
If I'm being completely frank, I think it's an utter bastardization of the Christian religion, period. I mean, it's taking what Christ said and turning it on its head. I mean, he never said those things in those ways. And here's the thing. How many times did Christ say, you got to clean your own house first, right? You got to make sure that your house is in order, right? And, we are a nation of laws. We know from, and I'm LDS, I've been practicing, I was raised LDS, Doctrine and Covenants, the Constitution was divinely inspired, right? Like all the principles about like, we believe in honoring, obeying, and sustaining the law, like those goes out the window when it's something that somebody else has told you that you're a meanie if you do it this way.
Yeah.
Like no one's going to go to the family of that young 14-year-old girl in Harriman that was raped and be like, should we bring in some more illegals? I think that's the nice thing to do. Let's bring in some more refugees, right? Nobody's going to walk the streets of London or Paris and see what's happened in those cities, right? And say, yeah, we should bring this to Salt Lake. And there's ways to do it in a humane way, right? That's what being nice is. You enforce the law in a humane way. That's the purpose of due process, right? That's the purpose of habeas corpus, right? But to say, well, we shouldn't enforce the law, well, then what happens to the people who relied on that and built a life around that? And now you're telling them that, sorry, you don't count. Only those people who want to disobey the law count. Christ never taught that.
Yeah, I see this constantly where, like, for example, just in a school, I've substitute taught a couple times because I thought I was going to become a teacher. Turns out I don't have the personality for a teacher. Shocking to no one. But I remember going to a few classes where half of the students spoke Spanish and not English. Yeah. And I was shocked by that in Provo. Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is insane. And so that means most likely these people are not here with our permission. They're not learning the language. They're not teaching the language. And we are not even expected to teach them our language. We do all of the classes in Spanish as well as English. We hire additional people on so that they can translate. We have all their assignments in Spanish. And it's like, excuse me, do we have any rules or laws here and we have to pay for this? Our tax dollars go towards their housing, their food, their education. How do we benefit from this? I would like to know. But you can't say any of that because it's not nice. Well, Trent, it's not nice.
And what I used to tell people is like, well, you should say that to my mom. My mom immigrated to this country when she was 19 with her parents. She didn't speak English. She got a job and learned English on that job the best she could, right? She went through the process. She naturalized, right? I mean, it's kind of, she was literally going through the Panama Canal when they got news that Kennedy was shot. Wow. And everyone on that boat, there was Japanese, there was Argentines, there were Brazilians. Everyone on that boat was devastated. They weren't Americans, but they were devastated because they knew what that meant to the world, that this hope, right? This JFK, this, this shiny American leader was shot. What does that mean for the rest of us, right? They wanted to come here and be American. Yeah. She will always love Argentina. She will always have pride in that culture. And growing up, and she grew up Methodist, she's proud of that. She's American, and she wanted her kids to be American. And that's the notion that we've gotten away from, is come to this country and wave the flag of your country of origin. Like, do you want to be American or not? Right? Like, and I don't see any reason to fund that. That to me is the literal definition of an invasion. You want to come here and be an American? I will help you all day long. Right? But otherwise we disagree.
Yep. And I think that most, it's so annoying because I feel like most people in Utah, you explain it to them like that and they would agree with you. But the fact that we're a sanctuary state and nobody cares, nobody cares at all. We just go every single legislative session and it just kind of passes us by. It's like, we are losing the state and we don't even care. We don't even enforce our culture on other people who come here. It's crazy.
Right. Well, and it's aided by a media that wants to be complicit with the notion that no, we're not a sanctuary state. And the governor and his team saying anybody that says we're a sanctuary state is a liar, when everybody knows it. I mean, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, it's a sanctuary state, right? And the federal government's recognized it. There's steps that could be easily taken by either the governor or the legislature to eliminate some of the reasons why we are a sanctuary state, but they don't take them. And they don't take them because, well, we're not a sanctuary state, so we don't need to take these steps. Well, yes, we are, right? And it's affecting our safety. It's affecting the drug trade that runs right up I-15 and across, I-80 and up U-40, right? US 40. It affects us. It affects like you said, the culture, it affects the economics, it affects everyone. But again, it's not to get back, to harp on this, but it's something that the Attorney General has the power to get involved in.
Right.
But that requires standing up to a governor and a legislature that may not be amenable.
Yeah, you got to have the stones to do it. And I don't think the establishment really wants to take that on, in my opinion. But well, thanks everybody for listening. We're going to keep going, but I'm going to do a little ad read. If you haven't liked and subscribed, go ahead and do it to Dan the Eagle, to my personal YouTube account, or to Main Street Media Utah on X, Rumble, and on our Facebook. If you want to call in and ask Trent or myself a question, you can. The number is 385-899-2134. Our lonely call screener is waiting patiently for you to call in. If you'd like to ask me or Trent any questions about the sanctuary state, status of Utah, what we need to change, why we love Governor Cox, I'm sure we would love to answer any of those questions for you. So, Trent, I take it you're not a huge...
You are listening and watching KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. We are live on YouTube, X, Rumble, and our website, kmmu.org. We are on the air every weekday between 4 and 7 p.m. You can find us on your favorite platform by searching KMMU. On X, we're at Media Utah. On YouTube, at Utah Main Street Media. On Rumble, /KMMU. Monday afternoon, join Gowd Margani for the Gowd Crowd. Tuesdays, listen in for John Twitchell's Talk with John. Wednesdays, Dan Fillmore hosts Dan the Eagle. Listen in on Thursday at lunch for Delane England and the Liberty Moms. On Thursday afternoons, one of our most prolific hosts, Lori Gagan, podcasts The Wellness Crusaders for health and wellness information, or Poison Power for political news and commentary. Fridays, join our dynamic duo, Jared and Holly, for political head trauma for a political week in review and great local guests. Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. I'm Trent Christensen, and this is KMMU. KMMU and Main Street Media stream live wherever you enjoy your streaming. We broadcast live on YouTube, Rumble, X, and on our website, KMMU.org. Now please join our host, John Twitchell. This is Let's Talk Utah's Talk with John.
Good afternoon, everybody. Looking forward to being with you here today on KMMU.org, Main Street Media, Utah. Now, folks, you can join us on Main Street Media, Utah on a number of the different platforms we have. First of all, KMMU.org. Feel free to go there. Then, secondly, obviously, you can find us on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, as well as our other channels on Rumble and YouTube. So we look forward to being with you for the remainder of the next hour and 45 minutes, roughly. Look forward to chatting with you. Now, before I introduce my guest, I'm just going to mention, boy, he's got some big stuff that's happening. We got some big stuff that's happened. He's got things he can't even talk to me about. Oh, well. But the bottom line is he's here to bring lots to us and lots to you. So we're looking forward to have it before I introduce him real quickly, I want to give out the top of the hour show prayer and the show mantra. Now, the prayer of my heart, when it comes to doing this show, like I said, it's the prayer of my heart. It's not actually, I must admit, it's not, we'll leave it. It's prayer of my heart. I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra, where I try to take guidance and the direction of what we're trying to do about this show is: where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. Comes from multiple places throughout Scripture, as well as Article 7 of the Constitution. Now, let's bring on my great guest, Michael Letts. Michael Letts is the founder, CEO, and president of InvestUSA.org. As you can see on your screen, I'm going to read it real quick again, though, for those of you that may listen listen as opposed to watch. Michael Letts is with Invest USA. They are a national grassroots nonprofit organization that is helping through fundraising activities and educational programs, giving first responders information and free active shooter vests. So that was done from memory, Michael. How did I do?
I'm impressed. That was a very good job, John. Tell you what, it shows that evidently we've been friends for a long time. You remember all that.
Well, bottom line is, we have been, it feels like we've been friends for a long time. I consider you one of my really good friends. Okay, and let me tell you a little bit, folks. Let me tell you a little bit about Michael Letts. Some of you have may heard this story and some of you haven't. So I had a son who's right now like 6'3", bench presses almost 300 pounds. He's a sophomore in high school. He's in the 1,000-pound club, which means between benching, squat, and deadlift, he can do over 1,000 pounds. That's a significant level of lifting, especially for a sophomore in high school. So he's about 6'2", 6'3", and last year, twice within 5 months, we found ourselves in the hospital because his lung collapsed. His lung grew too fast for the body, and the little air sacs had, I think they're called bleps, and they pop sometimes with, and don't worry, if you're a young woman, if you're a young man who's not over 6 feet tall, hasn't had a big growth spurt, you're not going to have to worry about this. This only happens with people that are somewhat tall and grow quickly. But Michael Letts, we missed a show, and I called Michael to let him know, hey, Michael, I was in the hospital with my son. It was the second time that it happened, and he was down, having a little bit of a struggle. And so I called Michael and I said, Michael, please forgive me. I'm not going to be able to do today's show. I just wanted to let you know, brother, I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss not being there. but I wanted to give you a heads up. And you were like, hey, thanks for calling me. And I said, well, I'll let you go. And you said, whoa, hold on. I got Karen here. And right at that moment, he said, John, may I pray with you? May I pray over your son? And I felt like I had a pastor laying his hands on my son. It's one of the most meaningful things that have happened to me in my life, bud. And that was big. That was big. Thank you. So that's the kind of man that Michael Letts is. He made sure he prayed for me, and he's doing fine now. He only missed one football game through that whole process. So we are very blessed. But bottom line, that's the kind of individual that Michael Letts is. That's the kind of friend he is, that when things are not going well, he prays for you. I know he prays for his nation, and this world matters to him. And I firmly believe he has a very good relationship with his maker. So thank you, Michael Letts, for being my
Thank
friend.
you, John. It's always a privilege to be your friend, and quite frankly, I'm just so honored for what you're doing, John. Sometimes you don't get enough credit for what you do. Here's what I mean by that. Right now, American people are desperately searching for hope. They think we have a change in direction, but the question is the valid question. Is America too far gone? Can we reverse course? Can we reverse direction? Or is the corruption too deep that basically it's over? And of course, I do not believe that, and we're giving reasons on your show why. But the only way people will know that that's not true is if they hear it from shows like yours, because the mainstream media will do absolutely nothing to present anything positive in this country or anything problems that need to be addressed, because they want this country destroyed. So thank God for stations like you, for hosts like you, who have the moral courage to stand up and say, hey, I'm going to be willing to make sure the public understands the truth. For that, we thank you, John.
Well, Main Street Media Utah, that's what it's here for. And so we're grateful to have you be part of the show today. Now, before we get going any further, I do want to mention this. You've got your own show, Michael Letts. So let's why don't you share with the audience your show? Good thing it's not like 5 days a week, all day long, because then we couldn't mention it, right? But tell us about your show and where people can find you.
Well, if they go to crn.com, which is, the network, it's all broadcast all across the country. It's a national show, the Michael Letts Show. It's over on the weekends, and now it's expanded into so many stations, into so many different times in different areas. Honestly, you'd have to go to the website to figure out, what is available in your area, since it's being broadcast by satellite. But quite frankly, the reason we did it was for this, because what we do on your show, John, people need to know what's going on, and they need to have the truth, and they need to know how to pray for this country, and even more importantly, they need to know how to act and what they need to do to be able to be the beacons of light that Scripture commands us to be. Scripture says we're supposed to be as a city of light on a hilltop, not as a candle under a bushel. And your ability and the show that we're doing help American people understand what's going on and help provide direction as to what they can do to help, because
Pause it
all
right
hands
there.
on deck.
Pause it. Sorry, forgive me for interrupting.
No, go right ahead.
I think this is extremely awesome to point out.
Big numbers.
Donated 13,520. Years
Actually,
of
it hasn't been
32.
updated. It's 17,000 now.
Wow. Number of donations 6,217,000. How much money have you gotten from AID?
Well, gee, nobody ever told me about the program, John. So I guess I got left out in the cold, along with the rest of the taxpayers. Sad part about it is that's your and I money. And boy, I'll tell you what, John, I know we're going to discuss it on the show today, but if we could have just simply stopped the criminal element, the money laundering, the fraud, not waste. Waste is bad enough, but waste is nothing compared to the fraud and the money laundering that's going on. I don't think we'd have a deficit in this country of $36 trillion right now.
Well, let's hope that it gets turned around, and
it's going to. may not be pleasant, but it's going to, trust me.
Well, the good thing is some of the states are starting to pick up on this idea of what Doge is doing. So let's hope that more states wind up doing this, so we can find it all throughout the government. We have a auditor here in Utah. Her name is Tina Cannon. great last name. And an interesting thing about her is what kind of got her on the political scene is she wound up calling out some of the corruption that happened up in a town that she lives in. I believe it's a town. If it's not the town, it's the county. But there was some corruption going on. She pointed it out, and we have a good one here. So I think we've got another one of her, and that reminds me, I've got to reach out to her and get her on. So let's continue. So let's hit some of the topics. Now, I want to mention I want to mention that I do want to hit these, and these came up right as I was getting on. Letitia Files, Letitia James, how radical politicians fueled Letitia James' political ambitions. There's been a bunch of work been done. She happened to get a bunch. She happened to basically what she accused President Trump of doing. She's did.
Done.
So her and Ilhan Omar figured out, hey, marrying your family, meaning like not a spouse that becomes family, but literal marrying family members, at least on paper, right? You get one into the country, the other one you get some property done. Then also, India launches massive missile attack on Pakistan. That's a little concerning. And then also Stephen Miller. Actually, I really like this guy. Stephen Miller's
He's
America
great.
First Legal drops bombshell lawsuit against Chief Judge Roberts. So how about we start with that one? The lawsuit accuses the powerful duo of the lawsuit against Chief Justice John Roberts Jr. in his capacity as presiding officer of the Judicial Conference of the United States and Robert J. Conrad, director of the administrative offices of the U.S. courts. The lawsuit accuses the powerful duo of running what AFL describes as an unconstitutional shadow agency and violating federal transparency laws. The lawsuit filed on April 22nd slams the Judicial Conference. And so I want to get your thoughts.
Well, I think Steven's exactly right at what he's doing. Let's put it in layman's terms so that all of our listeners and viewers can understand. You have an association that is run, obviously. The chief presiding officer is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, and the membership there is kind of like a little country club. You're not a member of the Judicial Association, you don't go anywhere because you remember it is the Supreme Court Chief Justice that appoints cases to federal courts, to federal judges. And it is also the membership that kind of interact with each other. It doesn't make any difference whether you're liberal or conservative in the country club setting. You're all drinking buddies together, and they all discuss objectives of what they're going to do. So what Stephen has said, and rightly so, is this association has now come to the point to where it is running our judicial system. Why do you think Boasberg, who we all know is the federal appeals court that ordered the plane to return with the Salvadorian illegal immigrants, etc., why do you think he gets all the cases that have to do with Trump? Nobody else does. They're all appointed to him because they know he can't stand Trump. And he's close friends with John Roberts, by the way. Why do you think that if you're going to elevate yourself onto a court system, the Supreme Court or Federal Court of Appeals, etc., it all comes by recommendations from within the Judicial Association? How do you think the FISA court got established? Who do you think picked the members of the FISA court? Now, take the for a moment, and all this goes back to John Roberts. Now, you remember John Roberts has the cover. I'm a conservative appointee. I'm the one that's supposed to make the difference between a conservative and a liberal court. That's the public statement. But privately, you look at all of his behind the scenes dealings. Who referred and who signed off on the cases for FISA to illegally tap the president, open up investigations during his first term, etc. John Roberts. Who is the one that refuses to? Now, because here's what the Constitution says about our judicial system. The Constitution only created a Supreme Court. That's it, with limited
Right.
power. Okay, people think they're all equal branches of government. They're not. They're not equal. The executive branch is not equal with the legislative. Legislative is not equal with the executive branch. They all have different roles. Judicial branch has a very unique role, and that is simply to interpret the laws that are passed, not even to enforce it. Because if they were to be enforcing them, they would have their own police department, their own military, et cetera, et cetera. So they're just to interpret. What has happened over the years? Well, you've got two breakdowns here, John. First of all, in Congress, we got a bunch of no backbone politicians. That's being very nice.
Bunch of
So what did
cowards.
they do? Yeah, a bunch
Yellow
of cowards.
bellies.
Thank you.
Yellow bellies.
Yellow bellies is even better term. So what did the yellow bellies do for decades? Well, I don't want to vote on any controversial bill because I'm going to get some people mad at me. And remember, this is no longer about public service. This is about my lucrative future. Because look at how much I get paid. It's not just what I get paid. Forget the little measly $175,000 a year that they think is measly. Most Americans would just literally be in shock to get paid that much a year. But it's not about that. It's about the benefits. It's about all the insider trading. It's about taking all the kickbacks and how they're able to manipulate a system so they can get by with doing that. You and I never know about it. And yet they come into Congress with, say, $50 in their account and they leave with 50 million. How does that happen? We both know how it happens. Nefarious purposes behind it that cause this to happen. And so because of that fact, they don't want any of that exposed. And so you've got a judicial system now that is supposed to be reining in these activist judges. Because you remember the Constitution only created the Supreme Court in a limited role for law interpretation. What happened is Congress was given the authority under the Constitution that should this Supreme Court need additional assistance, they could create district judges. And the district judge was only for the district or the boundaries of which it was assigned therein. But what has happened, as we were talking about a minute ago, Congress decided they didn't want to create any controversial decisions because they wanted people to vote for them, because they wanted to keep all those benefits. So they passed a book. Should we pass a bill that says you can no longer abort a child, say after the 10th week, 15th week, whatever? Oh, no, because some people say yes, some people say no. Pass it on to the court. Let the court decide whether abortion is legal or not. Let the court decide whether you can carry a firearm, even though the Constitution says you can't. Let the court decide. That way, nobody can get mad at my vote. But what did the courts do? Well, they don't have to answer to the public because they're not elected. They're appointed. And so what they did, remember who are they appointed by? Appointed by Congress. So sure, we'll take over your role of not having to vote on anything controversial. We'll make the decisions for you. But they also took that to mean that I guess you're giving us more power too, even though the Constitution doesn't allow for it, you're giving us more power. And so the court system began to latch onto that power to the point now where we have district judges making nationwide edicts. They pass a injunction, or nationwide. You can no longer send any deportees, any illegal immigrants out of this country without our approval, or any Venezuelan, or any Trinidad, whatever the court, that federal district judge decides. He says you can't do it nationwide. That's totally unconstitutional because you remember you can only make a decision based on your district, not
Right.
for the nation. So how should it be handled and addressed? Well, the Supreme Court, who is supposed to be the chief judicial enforcer for the court system across the country, should be calling these federal judges and say, whoa, you're outside your boundaries. That decision doesn't stand. We're going to smack you for that and don't ever do it again. But they won't. What did the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court do? He castigated the president for calling them out. Don't sound like you're mad at the justices because that looks like you're trying to intimidate or trying to influence how they should interpret the law. You leave them alone, let them do whatever they want to do. John, Constitution never called for that. That's called a dictatorship. And the judicial branch has now become dictators to the conscience and to the role of America. They have the president as a figurehead only. They think they're running this country and that they can decide what policies should be implemented and what policies should not. Never the way the Constitution is set up. But remember, John Roberts is the president. I mean, he is, when I said the president, he is the key or the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So he won't take any ruling against his fellow judges other than to castigate the president for saying something about these activist judges. So what has Stephen done? He said, look, what you have done is you created a second entity, which you have to have a membership. You have to be a member of this country club, the Judicial Association. It's run by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He has the friends. He makes the appointments. He decides who gets what cases, etc. You created basically like a racketeering position, and that was never intended, never allowed for in the Constitution. You can't create a parallel or a shadow government, which is what we've allowed the judicial system to do through the Judiciary Association. So he's now filed suit. Now you say, yeah, but the people are going to hear it are the people he's going after on the Supreme Court. True. But here's the issue, John. At least the American people will get to hear them try to defend their unconstitutional behavior.
Right.
Where is this headed to? It's headed to major changes in our judicial system. One or two things are going to happen, John. Either we're going to get some real new leadership in the Supreme Court, or we're going to have to make those changes ourselves. What do we mean by that? John, I'm willing to make this statement. There's an awful lot of corruption in our judicial system. We know it. We've got casework against it. It's not been exposed yet. I'm telling the administration the time has come to start making sure the Attorney General issues the criminal referrals, issues the indictments, and we start seeing even judges. Yes, just because you wear a black robe does not put you above the law. Handcuffed and put before trial for their treasonous and nefarious acts. When you start seeing that happen, you're going to see a big change. The same thing with Congress. When you start locking people up, when you start holding people accountable, John, suddenly things are not as bright and rosy about committing crimes anymore.
Well, folks, here in Utah, we have a judge that was indicted for putting out child pornography and other things. We've got judges in Michigan. We've got judges in New Mexico that are supporting and defending and hiring and hiding illegal immigrants. And then on top of that, there has been some scuttlebutt that someone on the Supreme Court might actually have had some interactions with Epstein type stuff.
I think it's more than one.
That needs to come out right away.
No
that
question.
Needs to come out, because even if we can't touch, even if they're not touchable, that comes out, they're going to have to step down. And I think then impeachment should happen, and removal from office and other trials definitely should happen for those individuals.
I agree with you, John. I think you need to have it simultaneously. I think it's time. We have more than, I was arguing this afternoon before, that was the call I was on before I got on your show. I think the administration has more than enough evidence of illicit crimes and wrongdoings and treasonous acts. Here's my position: is you have enough evidence to issue what we call preliminary indictments. Doesn't mean you can't add to it. Doesn't mean you can't subtract from it if something you find out is not actually documentable. But we don't ever do that. In preliminary indictments, we only indict based on enough facts that we feel like we have at present to win that particular charge. So it's time to go on ahead and move to indictments, charge with what we have, keep those charges open so we can continue to add to it as investigations go further. But the American people have the right to see that we meant what we said, and we're going to hold people regardless of their status. I don't care if you got governor. I don't care if you got president beside your name. I don't care if you got chief justice. Whatever your title is irrelevant. You're an American, and you're to be held accountable for your actions, period. The same as anybody else.
Well stated. Okay, let's move on to another subject, because boy, we're almost we're past a quarter of the way done with the show, and man, we've covered one thing. Any thoughts that you want to mention on India launching missile attack on Pakistan? Anything there?
Yeah, there's no question. We've been monitoring that situation throughout the day closely. Here's where we're at, folks. I'm gonna call them the cabal. It's a global situation. We've talked about it on your show before. The dominance of one world organization to determine the fate of everybody there. The only thing standing in its way is the United States. They quickly determined that America was too big, too powerful to attack from without. They would have to destroy from within. They have been attempting to do that for the last couple of decades, have gained great success in some areas, but with the election of President Trump, obviously suffered a tremendous setback. So what do they do to compensate for that? They need to shift the narrative. They need to shift the focus. How do they do that? One of the things that President Trump is doing is he's trying to keep us out of wars, which hurts the military industrial complex. They don't make money unless somebody's blowing each other up because they're able to sell the ordinances and the bombs to them. So they're pushing buttons. You've got whether it's in Ukraine and Russia, whether it's now India and Pakistan, they're trying to stir and create a global conflict, even a world conflict would be even better for them, which would then divert our attention towards survival, for lack of a better word, not allow us to make the necessary reforms, allow this president to serve out his remaining term, and then hopefully they can regain their power back, squelch all these ideas about trying to hold people accountable, about determining where the corruption's at, and get back to business as usual of continuing to destroy us from right within and making themselves wealthy and powerful at the same time.
Well, let's hope that we get that accomplished because we need to get rid of those that are more worried about making money than even making sure that people live. That
You're exactly right. You know, with India and Pakistan, they have been nemesis for quite some time, and quite frankly, I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of sway as to how they resolve their differences. I think the best way we have is to contain it to make sure it doesn't get any further than beyond their borders.
okay. Let's hit the next point. So, we've got a bunch of topics. Let's hit what's happening on the border. And you know, we've talked about how President Trump. So back, I want to say it was President Roosevelt, not
Teddy
Franklin,
Roosevelt.
Teddy,
Go
the
Teddy.
good one, the good
Mhm.
one, or at least the
Yep.
better one of the two. He created a 60-foot strip along the
It goes
border?
from 60 to 150, depends on the area.
Okay, 60
We're
to
claiming
100.
150 all the way around.
Let's make it 150. I think that's reasonable. Let's have a 150-foot strip that can be transferred over to the DOD in case of smuggling. Well, heaven knows that there's been a ton of smuggling going on there. And so it's been transferred to the Department of Defense. And on top of that, Donald Trump reached out to the president of Mexico and said, "Hey, we're happy to help come down and help take care of all those nasty drug gangs that you have." And she turned that help down. Now he said
Correct.
she's a lovely individual, and we would like to help her out, but she's too afraid of the gangs, too afraid of the gangs down there to do that. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's no question what you said is correct. Let's be clear about what's going on. The cartels have run the Mexican government for decades. Okay, you know, when they say they have elections, John, that's not exactly accurate. They have elections, but they're even worse than an American election. Talk about without integrity. It doesn't do you any good to run, John. The decision has already been made long before the filing ever opened, and they see to it that their candidate is put into place. They've rigged all the ballots, and just in case you start calling them out about nefarious activities, they'll just shoot you. So, I mean, quite frankly, you know, it's well known who's going to be the next president. And here's how it works. If we decide you should be the next president, John, there's one condition. When we give you a directive, we don't want any pushback. Just make sure it gets done. So, quite frankly, here's what happened with the United States. Of course, the Biden administration was basically subservient to the cartels. The cartels have full control over all of our border, southern border, and they were running. Remember, we talked about it before on your show. 15,000 people a day through $20,000 a head per person, making tons of money on human sex trafficking, human smuggling, and then that doesn't include the cartel drug operations of fentanyl and everything else. So they were making more money than probably our whole economy generates. When the president got elected, he said, "I'm going to make our border secure. I'm going to make a secure environment for the American people. We're going to shut those borders down. We're going to shut off the drug ability, the cartels, and we're going to make sure that, quite frankly, we don't allow any more illegal immigrants across." I'm pleased to report to you that right now, John, the last statistic that we have study shows 99.96% of illegal immigration activity has ceased. We are only
Wow.
0.04. Now, you say, what does that mean? 15,000 a day under the Biden administration. You're talking about less than a handful a day now, if even a handful that are trying to get across. The president decided to try to make that permanent to make sure that nobody got across. So what did he do? Very simple. Um, Instead of allowing just this 0.04% to still get across, he decided I'm going to give another tool into the arsenal to combat illegal immigration. Because Roosevelt had this buffer zone, we call it a buffer, that was deeded to the United States as American government property. The president transferred that property over to DOD as a military installation. What does that mean? Whether you realize it or not, from the from the Gulf, I mean not from the Gulf, from the ocean, the Pacific Ocean of California, Southern California, all the way to the Gulf of America on the Texas border, 100 feet from the Rio Grande River, all the way across, is now a military installation. So you've got an installation that's about 100, 150 feet wide, 2,000, 3,000 miles long. Okay. What's the significance in doing that? You remember, we can't engage military operations for protection on the border. We can only engage them to go after the terrorist organizations that we have labeled as domestic terrorists. Now we have military presence on our entire border. So we can have military presence anywhere up and down the entire border strip at any point in time. That's now a military installation. That's the first thing. And quite frankly, the president is moving military personnel down there. You're seeing tents, temporary housing. You're seeing all kind of things go up all across these 2,000 miles of military installation. But here's the most critical thing that it does. And I'm fixing to give you a little funny statistic on this. Now, if you decide to come across the border and you set foot on American soil, you didn't set foot on American soil. You set foot on American military installation without authorization. You know what it is? The penalty is for trespassing on a military installation without authorization?
I'm going to guess it's
Not
a
good.
felony.
It's a felony and it's not good. We've had 89 so far that are now in military custody because they have set foot unauthorized on a military installation. And that's quickly getting back to Mexico. So there's 0.04 that we're still trying to make the attempt. How are they making the attempt? You remember, we don't have the wall completed yet. Still working on that. We don't have all the electronic monitoring and surveillance equipment in place just yet. Still working on that. It takes us a little time to complete all that, but we're moving at a rapid pace to complete that. So in the meantime, while that's being completed, now you have the Mexican immigration society, shall we say, those who are discussing, hey, I'm thinking about going to America. You want to go with me, John? Now the word's getting back to them. Things have changed, guys. You get across the water without drowning or without getting, I think we should put alligators in there, but anyway, or without getting, you get across, you navigate across the river and you set foot on American soil. It's no longer you get to run for it. Or if you do get caught, hey, they'll go ahead and send you anywhere in America anyway, give you a free airline, bus ticket, train ticket, whatever you need, free lodging, free food, etc. Now you get caught, you're locked up in a military prison. So you're being held for a military trial for espionage. I mean, put it this way: you come on to a military installation without authorization, trespassing. We have to question your motives, John. Why would you do that? So you're subject to a whole different judicial standard than you ever thought conceivable. And it's scaring them to death. We think it'll take care of this other 0.04% that are trying to get across now anyway. And it's
Okay.
been very effective.
So the numbers that we used to have, those were numbers. So like how many people were coming across the border? That was that the ones that were coming through and reporting, or was that including the
Those,
gotaways or
no, those are 15,000 a day that we were reporting that we knew of. The gotaways probably could have been that or not more. But right now, we've blocked the gotaways because of the fact that we have the majority of the wall built. That we don't have, we've got drones and all electronic surveillance in the air monitoring that. Plus, now you have military personnel, Humvees, APCs, troop carriers running up and down these 2,000 miles of open territory because it's a military installation and they're expected to protect their own installation.
So here's what I'm wondering. What can we do about the cartels in Mexico?
Well,
Or
that
are
goes
we
into
just
the next.
shutting up? Are we shutting enough things down that's causing issues? Because if my concern is, all right, that's what's happening at the southern border, then what's going to happen with the northern border? Because the northern border is significantly bigger and a lot more
That's a great
open than
question.
the
Great question, Joe.
southern border.
So let's address both of those questions. Let's address, first of all, the southern border and give a quick finalized update on that. So you remember when the president took office, we made it abundantly clear we were sending military personnel there, which now we've gone to the ultimate ability by establishing it as a military base to make sure we defended anybody that wanted to come across. Plus, we said this. We said that, not only shutting this down, we knew it was going to create disruptive their business plan, their business organization. So we made a point. You hurt any American, you hurt the hair of an American, you will incur the wrath of the American government. End of discussion. You remember we talked about it on your show. We had 9 American university college kids who were butchered, basically tortured, butchered, massacred. And then we also had the fact that, quite frankly, we had a number of two elderly tourists that were killed by IEDs on the roadside that were planted and set off to go out to kill them. So we honored our word. Now, nobody knows that. The mainstream media has never reported that because we're not trying to publicize it. But covert operations were put into place, and we did what was necessary, including going across the border if necessary to disrupt their operation and their supply line, their operational command, and anybody's presence that we could find. I had said this was months ago that if we did that, be prepared for a lull, which you saw, John. You didn't see anything discussed about the cartels for what, 30 days, something along those lines. And
Yeah.
then suddenly it would become a resurrection. The resurrection would be the fact that it would be what we call the second tier, the lieutenants who survived coming in, trying to put the pieces together and create a new empire for themselves. That is what is occurring right now. That is why you heard the president say, hey, we got them on the ropes. We got them on the run. We did what we need to do the first time. You want us to come across this time, welcome us. We don't have to do it covertly. Come across and we'll finish it off. Well, of course, she's scared for her life. She's scared not just for her life, for her children's life, for her grandchildren, for her parents' life, etc. So her immediate reaction was what the cartel told her to tell her. No, don't come across. Now, so that the American people understand. You remember I had mentioned to you before that a lot of armaments that were designated for Ukraine were sold on the black market, purchased by the cartels, and are 200 feet across the little river in a position to actually do harm to America, to its citizens. You don't think for a minute now that we're going to let that stand. So we're trying to be nice, saying we're going to help come protect you and eliminate your thing. We understand that you said no, and we get it. You don't want to be responsible for a decision. So what does that interpret for us, the American people? We're going to take care of business anyway. But now you don't have to have, you can have plausible deniability. You didn't support it, didn't approve of it, opposed it, but so you have no accountability with the cartels. But we're not going to let the security of the American people be jeopardized by a particular group that just happens to think they've got strong, which they do, strong armaments on the other side of the river that they think they can intimidate us with. Not going to happen, John. So you may or may not see it advertised in the media. But trust me, we've got this one under control. And remember, we said all along, you engage us. You did the wrong thing because our purpose is not to disrupt your operations, is to eliminate them. And you're seeing that happen now.
Well, I think right on our border, I'm more than fine with them eliminating opposition, shall we say. No problem at all whatsoever. It's what we should have been doing. Let me put it this way. Anybody that feels a little, little twinge of pain or guilt or weh for them, well, let's think about the rape trees that were on this side of the border for
Correct.
4 years. Let's think about the type of things that happen there. Little babies being dropped over the fence, hoping that they survived the fall, 6
Right.
to 10 feet. Let's not forget about those things and then the 300, anywhere between almost 400,000 to 1 million children that have disappeared into sex slavery. Let's not forget about them. In fact, one concern I have is I've heard two statistics along those lines. Once a child gets into sex slavery, once a person gets into sex slavery, they have either 36, the average lifetime is either 36 months or 7 years. I've heard both numbers. Life expectancy.
Life expectancy is 7 years. Usefulness to the cartel or to the human sex traffickers is 36 months. And you don't really want to live for the last 4 years after that anyway.
And so what happens to a lot of those children? They get their usefulness done, and then they kill them for their organs.
What happens to them is they put them through the process, and then after 36 months, they've gotten so many diseases, so many things, they're of no value anymore. So either they just let them die of the causes that they have contracted during their quote unquote profession, or they, as you said, if some of these organs are not affected yet by the contracted diseases, they eliminate them just to harvest those still viable organs.
So my point is, I have no problem with them putting someone down. Any of those cartel members, they deserve to be dead.
Well, and we're headed that way. Let me just give. We were talking about doing this throughout the show, but it's a great time to put it in here now. Let me just show the American people again how this directly affects you and what we've been talking about with these activists, judges, etc. We just had yesterday, Fairfax, Virginia, the D.C. area, illegal immigrant who was arrested. Local authorities arrested him for child sex molestation, pedophilia, and child sex trafficking. Went before one of these liberal judges, activist judges, who released him without bail. Just put him back on the street. It didn't cost him a dime. So infuriated the families that you would put somebody like that back on the streets to jeopardize their children. They contacted the administration. The administration immediately kicked into gear, had ICE go track him down within 30 minutes. We picked him up. He's now in federal custody because remember, he's an illegal immigrant. He ain't getting back out on the street, John. The next skyline he will see will be his own country and the prisons that his own country has.
Well, let's hope that, and that's another thing that Joe Biden did. Emptied all their prisons and emptied all their insane asylums and sent the people to the United States.
Exactly.
From the other countries. I mean,
you know, John, I was saying on another show I was on earlier today, what kind of a mindset would you put? I'm not talking about somebody that's accused. I get it. Hey, he said, she said, you want to be careful on how you move forward with that because you have proof. When you have documentation and you have the evidence of child sex trafficking, of child molestation, of child pedophilia, what warped mind from a judge would put somebody like that back on the street to continue to his horrendous acts against children? See, that's the issue. It's bad enough when you do it to an adult, but who's going to stand up for the kids? And quite frankly, I think it's just a nefarious crime for them to do that. And I think it's time that we hold these judges accountable for harming God's children.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's put it this way. It's time for those judges to be impeached and removed from office, and maybe even worse.
I'm probably, you and I might differ a little bit here. You've already demonstrated to me what you think about kids. Impeachment and removing your office is an afterthought. It's time for you to be held accountable because you're actually the one that has the blood on your hands.
Absolutely. Yeah, they need to be, they need to go to jail. And, you know, cops and judges don't do too well in jail as is. And then you throw in, oh, by the way, these people were doing stuff with kids. They don't do too well in prison.
No, and here's the funny part about it, John. Here's what I'm smiling about. But you remember now, this administration is a tyrannical dictatorship run by an org who has no compassion. So don't worry, we've changed that image. Okay, instead of sending them to El Salvador, for those who are American citizens, we'll create an El Salvador here. That's why we're going to reopen Alcatraz and, actually really make it a 5-star glorious experience for those who feel like they want to harm America's children.
Well, it was interesting what Donald Trump said about Alcatraz. It's beautiful, terrible, um, and a bunch of other. It was, I can't remember all the adjectives, but it was like an incredible place, the best and the worst place all at the same time. So it would. So okay, do you think there is actually any level of reality that he's actually thinking about opening Alcatraz again, or do you think
Oh, there's
that
no
was just
question.
him trolling the media?
No, no, there's no question. And let me tell you why I said there's no question. You want to accuse me of being an org, of how dare you even consider? Because you remember we have the option open that we can move our president El Salvador said, hey, you can send your worst criminals over here. We're happy to accommodate them and charge you less than what you're paying to incarcerate over there, save you money. And we actually took a look at that. And what did the liberals do? How dare you consider moving an American citizen over to another country? You can't do that. You can't remove an American citizen from American soil. The president said, fine. Okay. That's the way you want to be. We'll have just as nice of luxurious accommodations for them here. Got a great place already built. We just need to renovate it a little bit. It's called Alcatraz. And no, we're dead serious. If that's the way you want to be as a liberal, you demand that they be kept in this country. We've got some places we can put them in this country. They're not going. They're going to wish they had gone to El Salvador, quite frankly, when it's over with. But we're happy to show you our compassionate side and keep them within the borders of the United States.
Okay, so we may have found something that we finally may disagree on. I was like, I hope he's trolling that he's going to send American citizens to El Salvador. That concerns me. I don't want American citizens, even the ones that have broken the law, sent to other countries. I want them kept here in the United States. So, do you think it was him trolling, or did he mean it?
No, it wasn't trolling. It certainly was something to consider. And quite frankly, you say, why would you make that statement? Well, quite frankly, let me just tell you what the sentiment is. You abuse the system. We know that you're one of the most heinous people around. Why should I have to continue to pay for your meals and your accommodations for 30 years? Technically, I'll just take you out back and hang you. But, quite frankly, if you're going to make me do something, then let me do what's best for the taxpayers. Get you totally away in case there's any breakout, which there really wouldn't be. But if there was one, don't want to put you back at risk. I mean, the American people back at risk because of you. So I'll move you out to another area. I'll pay less to accommodate you. And quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, if you were over here, you deserve the death penalty anyway. So we haven't lost anything. That was the mindset.
Okay, so here's my concern. That winds up being used on Michael Lett's Talk with John, Alex Jones, some insert conservative here. They wind up doing when the Democrats get in power, that they might implement something like that. That's my big concern. I will say that is the main reason why the J6ers, I never wanted the J6ers in jail to begin with. And that's why, my concern is they get sent over to El Salvador or to Venezuela. That's my concern of why I say we don't even do it to the bad guys that we all know deserve it, that are American citizens. Your thoughts, Michael?
Well, let me give you the pushback on that, John. I'm glad we found something we can finally debate back and forth a little bit. They're going to do it to him anyway. They just haven't thought about it yet. Doesn't mean they won't think about it. Why do you think the J6ers not even charged, okay? Just arrested, not even charged, not even given the right to due process for bail.
Right.
And you think, okay, well, here's a nice, clean holding cell. They put him in the worst of the poorest place they could find in the federal prison in D.C. I mean, they put them in, isolation. They put them in inhumane conditions. They basically let the guards taunt them, abuse them by, withholding food, medical attention, etc. So don't tell me that they don't have the capacity to do that. They're already going to do that. Maybe they didn't think smart enough to say, let's send them to El Salvador. But I guarantee you, given it time, they would have thought of it anyway. Maybe not El Salvador. They would have sent some other place. Or they just would have executed them. It's time that we take a look at people with nefarious actions and make them see that the consequence of their actions are much more severe than they're wanting to pay, and stop your bad behavior. That's why, whatever it takes, in my opinion, we have to do. I understand your concern. I share it in one sense. But John, we don't live in a perfect world. That's the problem.
Unfortunately, no, we don't. Okay, so we found something that we are on some I mean, it's not like we're totally opposite on that, but a point of slight disagreement. I think we finally, that might be like, if it's not the first, it's like the second. Okay.
Well, let me throw one other quick thing in there. Why do you think the Taliban, why do you think ISIS are so successful? They have no conscience. They take children and they cut off their heads in front of their parents to instruct fear. Now you say, well, we should never do that. I understand your thought. We should never stoop to those levels. But I'll tell you one thing, John. Unless you ever been in those circumstances, it is daggum effective. You talking about their parents are really just being shocked into fear that they won't do anything to pose nefarious activity. And I want to make sure that in this country that we send a strong message. You want to do nefarious activity? You better be prepared to lose your life.
Yeah. Fast, quick deaths because you're in the middle of doing something that, I'm sorry, the police weren't able to take you into custody. You're a dead man.
You're exactly right.
They did it to a guy. I think it was like a 72-year-old man here in Provo who had a cane, former I want to say Vietnam vet, because he said he's going to get his gunny suit in. That man couldn't walk to church that was like a block away. He had to be driven. Okay, so that's the type of things that are happening to American citizens on Joe Biden's watch when he flew into Utah. Okay, let's Dwayne, I hope you're there. I want you to bring up the Pope meme. Hopefully you can get that for us here shortly. I do want to mention gain of function news. Finally, it's the administration is putting out that no, there actually was gain of function, and it was started here in the United States. And Dr. Fauci, they didn't say this part, but basically, Dr. Fauci, you lied. I want to get to that subject, but first, let's hit this big, beautiful meme of Pope Trump, and it's funny how the Dems are losing their minds over this. We're not hearing any. Hello from the Vatican, says Dwayne, our call producer. I find this one of the more comical memes, and it's funny how I love Donald Trump's comment on this. Yeah, that kind of looks good, but the problem is you have to be you can't be married, and he's like, I have no desire not to be married, right? So he goes, they might have a problem with that. And Dwayne says, "Isn't that a Nazi salute? Not quite." Not quite, but close.
It looks close, Dwayne. Looks close.
Yeah, it's pretty close there. But the Dems are losing their mind over this tweet. I'm sorry. You Dems that are like, clutching your pearls. Oh, how dare you? Yeah, it's just a joke.
Well, I think they lose the purpose behind this. And, I really respect the president for it. Because obviously it's generating the discussion. And why did he want to generate the discussion? Because let's take a look at reality, folks. What has the Vatican done to take care of child sex abuse, child sex trafficking? Let's talk about who's really behind a lot of these operations and who's making the money? Let's get into the facts. And no, on second thought, we don't want to talk about that. That's why he wanted to highlight. Okay, perfect time to talk about it. You're going to elect a new pope. Why don't we take a look at electing somebody who's going to clean up the scum that has been allowed to exist? You say, why would you say that? It's well known, John. If you were a child molester in one parish, they just moved you to another one and tried to keep it quiet. They never took any consequences, any action against those that did such nefarious activities. So I think it's perfectly acceptable that he would generate discussion with a meme. I know it's kind of comical in a sense, but it brings us back to a more critical analysis. Folks, if you're going to change leadership, why don't you make sure the leadership has a platform of cleaning up the nefarious activities that discuss the abuse of children that this organization has become known for, quite frankly, to its shame for quite some time.
Well, also, I'm going to mention the Dems. How in the world can these Democrats say anything about what they're talking about when their sacrament, when they have a mobile Moloch, you know, abortion center
Correct.
right there at the Democrat at the Democrat what was it?
Convention, national
Democrat
convention.
convention. They
Mhm.
had a mobile Moloch altars, killing babies. I think it's Gretchen Whitmer, who is the Michigan
That's
governor.
correct, Governor. That's correct.
She had a little spicy uh young lady down on her knees and her giving her communion that was a little spicy, a little on the edge of shall we say lesbianism going on there. I mean, that was totally let's not forget the children's choir, the San Francisco children's choir or men's choir singing "We're going to come for your children." Sorry, folks. You on the Democrat side get nowhere with me on this one. Bottom line is, how dare you guys even bring it up when you got all that junk on your side of the fence? Sorry, you don't get to claim any of those things.
Exactly right, John. And I don't think it could have been better said by anyone. You put it exactly where it needs to be.
Let's go to Real ID. I'm really concerned about Real ID. This is another thing that I am not pleased with the Trump administration on. I think it was 4 administrations had talked about possibly getting this done, and we get this done under Donald Trump. This is scary.
Well, let me give you both sides because actually I agree with you, John. What is the flip side? What is the rationale behind it? We want real ID so that we can know exactly who it is that we're dealing with in terms of whether they're American citizens, when it comes to the ability to monitor our election process and who can and can't vote. I get that. But quite frankly, John, I think there's other ways of accomplishing it without this real ID mechanism in place.
Well, I'm concerned. I just don't think it's the federal government's place to be doing that for us to travel.
I think you have the same that whole issue happened after 9/11, and we overreacted. TSA, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the funny part about it. I mean, nobody likes to talk about this, but it's the facts, John, because I can prove it. Out of, I think it was, I'm trying to remember the last statistic that was given me. Let's just say it was 100 attempts to get through TSA with devices that are not permitted. I think 98 of them were successful. Two
Oh,
of
wow.
two of them were caught. So explain to me how all this whole TSA issue has made it safer for you and I to fly.
It hasn't with those statistics.
It hasn't, quite frankly, and we all know that to be a fact. And here's the sample. But what has it done to the American people? It's created great inconvenience, great infringement on privacy, on personal rights. I mean, shoot. Better be careful what you pack in your luggage. I'm not talking about illegal stuff. I'm talking about, your undergarments, etc., because they can just zip it open and dump it all for everybody to see if that's what they want to do. There's no excuse for that, especially, John, quite frankly, when as all you're doing is harassing the American people. You have accomplished absolutely nothing when it comes to securing our airways and our skies. What did they do? They basically cut back on the U.S. Marshals, Sky Marshals, what we used to call them. You remember that? And now they try to nail you in a line and put you as part of everybody else. Just go ahead and put the Sky Marshals back on the thing. They can handle the situation if something comes up in the air, and quit trying to infringe upon and impose on the American people.
Well, on top of that, didn't they use the Sky Marshals to follow around J6ers and the
Correct. Again, the weaponization, politicalization that was under the previous administration. Exactly right.
Okay. Next topic. Boy, we are getting through them, but we've still got a bunch more. Let's get into the let's hit again the judges. Let's get into Letitia James. Let's get into the judges. So first, let's start with. Yeah. Well, Dwayne says we're getting through them. Yes, we are. Okay, so let's get on to. Let's re-mention in New Mexico. More information has come out about the judge down there that had Trende Ragua or whatever it is.
In the Agueda, yes.
Had a gang member at his home. Then they had other gang members over. He was shooting them. He gave them an AR. I believe it was a suppressed AR-15. Supposedly that was the daughter's. What's going on there? What is that judge thinking?
Well, let's talk about what is the law first. First of all, it is a federal felony to harbor illegal immigrants. Okay, and because you remember they're criminals, it's a federal offense. It's a felony. Now, what was he doing? He knew that they were gang members, and it's not just that they were gang members. First and foremost, they were illegal immigrants. So he is harboring criminals and a fugitive. That's a felony, a federal felony in and of itself. Second of all, it's a felony for an illegal immigrant to possess a firearm. Okay? He's sitting there providing them one and using his ranch as target practice. He's encouraging them to bring other members. And quite frankly, so you've got a judge who is involved in criminal felonious activity.
And I'm going to throw this in. It wasn't just that he was allowing them to shoot their firearms. He was part of their training exercise.
That is correct.
Meaning
that is correct. And so, you know, what you're seeing here, John, is a total disregard for the law. Same thing with the judge in Wisconsin. Okay? You know, you're not supposed to, it is a felony, once again, it is a felony to obstruct justice in terms of harboring or aiding and abetting an illegal immigrant. Section 8 title is very clear. What is she doing? First of all, big signs in her court. If you're concerned about basically what she was saying, if you're concerned about getting caught by ISIS, please call our court hotline number and we can arrange to have your hearing heard via Zoom. So you don't even have to come in. You can be from an undisclosed location and guaranteeing you won't be caught. That's the first thing. You're talking about a slap in the face to the justice system. That's it. I don't know how you can get more slapping than that, quite frankly, John. The second thing that you're looking at is this. So then what happens? You have somebody that actually shows up. The ICE gets a tip off that he's there. They come in and you lie. You obstruct justice. He's not here. He's not in this court. In fact, we're just going to sit here and wait. No, you got to go down and talk to the chief judge. Knowing good well the chief judge wasn't there, trying to find a way to distract him. When they wouldn't do it, what does she do? She goes in and tells her law enforcement officer, her court officer, open up the back door, let them out the back, and make sure they don't get seen. She provided them an escape route. Okay. That is a third felonious idea. I want to
throw in this a little bit more. It's even a little bit more confangled than that. So it's not uncommon for a judge to have the attorneys, both the defense and the prosecution, to come back to her chambers to talk to them.
Correct.
But I don't know that I've ever heard of that they bring the defendant themselves into her chambers with just her defense attorney, leaving the prosecution out. So she brought those two into her chambers and then had her law enforcement, her personal law enforcement, escort him out the back door.
Yep, exactly right. And so you see, once again, why is she doing that? Because she thinks that wearing that black robe makes her above the law.
Yeah.
John, I mean, are we in a country now to where your title or your robe or whatever you're wearing dictates whether the law applies to you or not?
It sure seems
I certainly hope not. But that's the message that was being sent. So what do you think the feds were going to have to do? What do you think the Department of Justice Attorney General? If we're going to have any credibility, you've got to arrest people for breaking the law. We're in a precarious position right now, John. We've talked about this During the show, we're going to talk about it as the show continues. Right now, the American people are telling me all across the country, boy, have y'all ever uncovered corruption. But quit uncovering it if you're not going to do anything about it. John, when we lose the trust of the American people, we're going to lose this country.
Yeah, we will. All right, so I want to continue on with Letitia James. Good old.
You are listening to and watching KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. We are live on YouTube, X, Rumble, and our website, kmmu.org. We're on the air every weekday between 4 and 6. You are listening to and watching KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. We are live on YouTube, X, Rumble, and our website, kmmu.org. We're on the air every weekday between 4 and 7 p.m. You can find us on your favorite platform by searching KMMU. On X, we're at Media Utah. On YouTube, at Utah Main Street Media. On Rumble, /KMMU. Monday afternoons, join Gowd Maragani for the Gowd Crowd. Tuesdays, listen in for John Twitchell's Talk with John. Wednesdays, Dan Fillmore hosts Dan the Eagle. Listen in on Thursdays at lunch for Delane England and the Liberty Moms. On Thursday afternoons, one of our most prolific hosts, Lori Kagan, podcasts The Wellness Crusaders for health and wellness information, or Poison Power for political news and commentary. Fridays, join our dynamic duo, Jared and Holly, for political head trauma, for a political weekend review, and great local guests.